32 years. That's how long the trees in Miles Standish State Forest have kept their secret. How long the silence stretched between a sister's goodbye and a detective's knock. How long justice waited in the shadows of towering pines, patient as the seasons that changed around an unchanging truth. In 1986, 15-year-old Tracy Gilpin walked into these woods and never walked out. Her disappearance carved a wound through Kingston, Massachusetts, a wound that time couldn't heal, only deepen. Families locked their doors, children stopped playing alone, trust became as fragile as morning frost. But forests remember everything, and sometimes, after decades of silence, they finally decide to speak. When the truth emerged from beneath the fallen leaves, it carried with it the weight of all those waiting years, and the names of those who thought they'd buried their secrets deep enough. What happens when the past refuses to stay buried? Before we get into the story, drop a comment with your country and the time right now. The sun filters through suburban maples, casting dancing shadows on quiet streets where children still ride bikes without fear. Kingston in 1986 feels untouchable, a place where teenagers walk home alone and parents sleep with unlocked doors. The Cold War rages in distant headlines, but here in small-town Massachusetts, the biggest worry is whether the Patriots will make the playoffs. Tracy Gilpin, 15, radiates the kind of warmth that draws people like gravity. Dark hair catches the afternoon light as she walks with the easy confidence of someone who has never known real danger. Her laugh carries on the September breeze, a sound that will soon become memory. She wears the uniform of teenage normalcy, jeans, sneakers, a sweater against the autumn chill. Inside the modest two-story house, the sounds of everyday life continue their familiar rhythm. The television murmurs, with afternoon talk shows, a load of laundry tumbles in the dryer, and the smell of dinner preparation drifts from the kitchen. It's a scene repeated in countless American homes, ordinary in every way except for what's about to happen. "Mom! I'm going to meet someone. I'll be back by 6 for dinner." The screen door closes with a gentle slap that will echo in Barbara's memory for decades. Barbara Gilpin, 42. Tired from her 12-hour shift at South Shore Hospital, barely looks up from folding laundry. Her hands move automatically through the familiar motions: sort, fold, stack, while her mind processes the day's medical charts and patient needs. "Don't be late, honey. We're having spaghetti and meatballs, your favorite. And take a jacket. It's getting cold out there." But Tracy is already walking away, her footsteps growing fainter on the sidewalk. She moves with the purposeful stride of a teenager with somewhere important to be, someone important to see. The golden afternoon light follows her like a spotlight, illuminating her path toward the woods that border their quiet neighborhood. Carrie Gilpin, 12, watches from her bedroom window as her older sister disappears around the corner. Something about Tracy's posture, the set of her shoulders, the quickness of her step, suggests this isn't just another casual visit to a friend's house. But Carrie is absorbed in homework and teenage concerns, unaware she's witnessing the last normal moment their family will ever know. The afternoon continues its peaceful progression. Neighbors tend gardens that won't survive the coming frost. School buses discharge children who scatter to their homes like leaves in the wind. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks and falls silent. These are the sounds of a community at peace with itself, unaware that evil is about to shatter that peace forever. Tracy's path takes her past the Kingston Elementary School where she once learned to read, past the corner store where she buys candy with allowance money, past the houses of friends and neighbors who will soon become witnesses and suspects in equal measure. Each step carries her further from safety, closer to a darkness that has been waiting for her in the depths of Miles Standish State Forest. 6 o'clock comes and goes. The spaghetti sauce simmers on the stove, filling the house with the rich aroma of garlic and herbs, Tracy's favorite. Barbara sets the table for 3, each place setting a small act of faith that her daughter will walk through the door any moment, full of apologies and teenage explanations. 6:30. The sauce begins to thicken, clinging to the spoon as Barbara stirs with increasing agitation. Through the kitchen window, she watches neighbors return home from work, their headlights sweeping across the gathering dusk. Each set of lights could be Tracy getting a ride home. None of them are. 7. Dinner grows cold on the table. Barbara checks the clock digital numbers that seem to mock her growing anxiety. Tracy has never been late for dinner without calling. Never. The rule has been absolute since she started walking to friends' houses alone. Always call if you're going to be late. Carrie Gilpin, 12, pushes food around her plate with the unconscious gesture of someone whose appetite has vanished. Even at 12, she possesses an intensity that will one day drive her to law enforcement, a calling born from this very moment of helpless watching as her family's world begins to fracture. Maybe she's at Sarah's house and they lost track of time. You know how Tracy gets when she's talking. She probably forgot to watch the clock. The words sound hollow even to Carrie's young ears. Tracy is responsible, punctual, considerate qualities that make her current absence more frightening, not less. Barbara's mother instincts are screaming now, a primal alarm that drowns out rational explanations. 8. Barbara calls Sarah's house. Sarah's mother sounds surprised. Tracy never arrived for any planned visit. The phone tree begins, friend after friend, classmate after classmate, each conversation adding weight to Barbara's growing dread. No one has seen Tracy since she left home. This is Barbara Gilpin. Have you seen my daughter Tracy today? She left the house around 4 and she's not home yet. Each no hits like a physical blow. Tracy hasn't been to the library, the ice cream shop, the mall, or any of her usual haunts. She seems to have vanished between her front door and wherever she was going, a distance measured in blocks but feeling like an ocean of terrible possibilities. I'm calling the police. Something's wrong. Something's very wrong. The decision that begins 32 years of searching. Barbara dials 911 with fingers that shake like autumn leaves, not knowing she's about to speak words that will echo through decades of courtrooms and case files. My daughter is missing. The dispatcher's voice is professional, calm, asking questions that feel like knives. When did you last see her? What was she wearing? Does she have a history of running away? Running away. The words hang in the air like smoke from a fire that's about to consume everything. Tracy has never run away, never even threatened to. She loves her family, her life, her future plans. She's scheduled to take her driver's test next month, a milestone she's been counting down to for weeks. Dawn breaks gray and cold over thousands of acres of pine and oak, mist rising from the forest floor like the breath of sleeping giants. Miles Standish State Forest stretches across 12,000 acres of southeastern Massachusetts, a wilderness that can swallow a person without a trace, hides secrets beneath layers of fallen leaves and forgotten time. Detective Robert Murphy, 48, weathered by 20 years of investigating humanity's darkest impulses, organizes search teams with the methodical precision of someone who has seen too much but still hopes for the best. His coffee grows cold in a thermos as he spreads topographical maps across the hood of his cruiser, dividing the vast forest into manageable sectors. Volunteers emerge from the morning mist like an army of the hopeful neighbors who barely know the Gilpin family, teachers who remember Tracy's bright smile in their classrooms, strangers united by the terrible possibility that evil has touched their safe corner of the world. They arrive in pickup trucks and station wagons, carrying thermoses of coffee and hearts full of determination. We're looking for Tracy Gilpin. 15 years old, 5'4", approximately 110 pounds, brown hair, brown eyes, last seen yesterday afternoon wearing jeans and a blue sweater. She's someone's daughter, someone's sister. She's counting on us to bring her home. The search begins in earnest, voices calling Tracy's name echoing through the forest like a desperate liturgy. Don Peterson, a local businessman, leads Team Alpha through the northern trails. Mary Collins, a teacher at Kingston High, coordinates Team Beta along the southern boundary. Each team carries radios, first aid supplies, and the fragile hope that they'll find Tracy, cold and scared but alive. The forest resists their efforts with ancient indifference. Branches catch clothing and tear hope. Roots trip volunteers and send them sprawling into beds of decomposing leaves. The canopy filters sunlight into confusing patterns of shadow and illumination, making every shape suspicious, every movement potentially significant. Hours pass with nothing but false alarms, a discarded jacket that isn't hers, footprints that lead nowhere meaningful, the distant bark of a search dog that finds only the scent of deer and disappointment. The volunteers' initial energy gives way to grim determination, their voices growing hoarse from calling Tracy's name. Barbara Gilpin waits at the command post, a folding table covered with maps and coffee cups, accepting updates that grow more discouraging with each radio check-in. Carrie stands beside her mother, both of them learning that waiting is its own special form of torture, helpless, endless, filled with imagination's worst possibilities. Team Charlie, this is command. Any sign of the subject? Negative. Command. We've covered Sector 7 completely. Moving to Sector 8, the radio exchanges become a rhythm of disappointment, each negative report adding weight to the growing certainty that something terrible has happened to Tracy Gilpin. The forest keeps its secrets, swallowing human effort as easily as it swallows sound. 3 days of searching end in the worst possible way. The morning of September 23rd dawns crisp and clear, the kind of autumn day that should inspire hope but instead carries the weight of mounting dread. Forest Ranger David Torres, 34, begins his patrol of the remote northeastern section of the forest, an area so isolated that hikers rarely venture there. Torres follows a game trail that winds between towering pines, their trunks scarred by decades of wind and weather. Something feels wrong in this part of the forest, a disturbance in the natural order that his trained eye detects immediately. Branches broken in unnatural patterns, soil disturbed by something other than wildlife. Then comes the smell, faint at first, carried on the morning breeze like a whisper of corruption. Torres has encountered death in the forest before: deer struck by cars and crawling into the woods to die, raccoons claimed by disease, but this scent carries a different quality, something that makes his stomach clench with dread. Pushing through dense undergrowth, following the scent that grows stronger with each step, Torres discovers what 3 days of systematic searching could not find. Beneath a hastily constructed pile of leaves and debris, partially concealed by fallen branches, lies the body that was once Tracy Gilpin. The scene tells its story in brutally clinical detail. Signs of violent struggle mark the surrounding area: scuffed earth, torn vegetation, evidence of a young life, ended with savage brutality. Torres, despite years of training and experience, feels his composure crack like thin ice. Base, this is Torres. I need immediate assistance at grid reference. Echo 77. Send Detective Murphy, and send the medical examiner. And, God help us all, I found her. The radio crackles with static that sounds like weeping. In that moment, Tracy Gilpin transforms from missing person to victim, from hope to evidence, from a daughter someone is desperately seeking to a case that will consume decades of investigation. Within 30 minutes, the isolated grove becomes a hub of grim activity. Detective Murphy arrives with the medical examiner, crime scene technicians, and the photographer who will document this scene in images that will haunt investigators for decades. Yellow tape transforms the natural cathedral into a crime scene, nature's beauty corrupted by human evil. Dr. Patricia Webb, the county medical examiner, approaches the scene with professional detachment that doesn't quite mask her personal horror. 15-year-old victims are mercifully rare in her experience, but when they occur, they leave scars on everyone involved in the investigation. Preliminary examination indicates sexual assault and strangulation. I'll know more after the autopsy, but this appears to be a particularly brutal crime. The words hang in the forest air like a curse. Every investigator present knows that what they've found will change them, will haunt their dreams, and shape their pursuit of justice. Tracy Gilpin has become more than a victim. She's become a promise that must be kept, no matter how long it takes. The police station buzzes with grim energy. Detectives chase leads that crumble like sand. The medical examiner's preliminary report reads like a parent's worst nightmare: sexual assault, strangulation, a life ended with savage brutality. Detective Murphy stares at crime scene photos that will burn themselves into his memory. This isn't just another case, it's a promise he makes to a dead 15-year-old girl, a promise he'll spend decades trying to keep. I'm going to find who did this to you, however long it takes. Outside, Kingston wrestles with its new reality. Parents grip their children tighter. Teenagers no longer walk alone. The innocence that died with Tracy spreads through the community like a virus, infecting everything it touches. Weeks blur into months. The investigation board grows crowded with dead ends. Suspects cleared, alibis confirmed, hope systematically dismantled. Every lead feels promising until it dissolves under scrutiny. Local men are questioned and released. Known sex offenders provide alibis. The investigation begins to feel like swimming through quicksand. The harder they struggle, the deeper they sink into frustration. Someone in this town knows something. Killers don't just vanish, they leave traces, but the traces seem to lead nowhere. 1986 becomes 1987, and Tracy's case begins its slow slide from active investigation to cold storage. The promise Murphy made starts to feel like a lie, he tells himself. The first anniversary, Barbara and Carrie stand before a headstone that reads, Tracy Gilpin, beloved daughter and sister. The words feel inadequate for a life cut short, a future stolen, a family forever changed. Carrie, now 13, has aged beyond her years. The intensity that was always part of her nature has hardened into something approaching obsession. She studies her sister's face in the photograph attached to the headstone, memorizing every detail. I'm going to find out who did this, Tracy, I promise. It's a promise that will shape her entire life. Carrie doesn't know it yet, but she's just chosen her career, her calling, her obsession. The criminal justice system has gained a future advocate, born from grief and tempered by rage. 30 years later, the hallways of Massachusetts State Police Headquarters echo with the footsteps of Colonel Carrie Gilpin, now 42, a woman shaped by tragedy but not broken by it. Her uniform bears the weight of 3 decades of service citations for valor, commendations for excellence, the slow accumulation of recognition for a career built on the foundation of personal loss. The cold case unit occupies a corner of the building that once housed typewriter pools and carbon paper files. Now computers hum with digital databases, DNA analysis results, and the accumulated weight of unsolved mysteries. Files that once gathered dust in basement storage now live in climate-controlled servers, waiting for technology to unlock their secrets. Detective Sarah Martinez, 38, seasoned by 15 years of investigating humanity's darkest impulses, spreads Tracy's case file across her desk like tarot cards, revealing a future she hopes to change. 3 decades of evidence, witness statements, crime scene photos, forensic reports fill bankers' boxes that represent the accumulated effort of countless investigators. The original investigators are mostly retired or dead. Detective Murphy passed away 5 years earlier, taking with him decades of experience and a personal commitment to Tracy's case that bordered on obsession. But their work lives on in meticulous reports, carefully preserved evidence, and the institutional memory of a system that refuses to forget. The original investigation was thorough for its time. They interviewed hundreds of people, followed every lead, processed every piece of evidence with the technology available in 1986. But DNA analysis was in its infancy then. Carrie nods, her face maintaining the professional composure she's cultivated over 3 decades of law enforcement. But Detective Martinez can see the personal investment behind the professional mask, the slight tension around the eyes, the careful way Carrie holds her shoulders, the unconscious habit of touching the small silver pin on her collar. The pin belonged to Tracy. She was wearing it the day she died. The medical examiner released it to our family after the autopsy. I've worn it every day since I became a police officer. The admission hangs between them, a moment of vulnerability that transforms professional colleagues into co-conspirators in the pursuit of justice. Martinez understands now why this case has been assigned to her, why the cold case unit has prioritized a 30-year-old murder above more recent crimes. The DNA evidence from 1986 was limited. We could determine blood type, basic genetic markers. But with today's technology, with STR analysis and CODIS database searches, we might find something they missed. We might finally get answers. Carrie's face remains professionally composed, but her eyes betray 30 years of waiting, 3 decades of carrying a promise made by a grieving 12-year-old at her sister's graveside. This is the moment she's worked toward since deciding to become a police officer, the chance to fulfill a vow that has shaped every day of her adult life. Dr. Patricia Chen, forensic DNA analyst, handles evidence with the reverence of someone who understands that justice often lives in microscopic details. 30-year-old samples that once revealed nothing now speak in the language of modern science. Computer screens glow with genetic profiles that didn't exist when Tracy died. The combined DNA index system, CODIS database, has grown exponentially, turning cold cases into warm possibilities. We've got something. A partial profile from evidence collected at the scene. It's not perfect, but it's enough to run through the database. The computer search begins, algorithms comparing genetic markers across millions of profiles. Somewhere in the digital labyrinth of data lies a name, a person who thought their secrets were buried as deep as their victim. The call comes at 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday that will change everything. Detective Martinez's phone rings with news that has waited 31 years to surface. The DNA database has produced a match not perfect, but close enough to demand investigation. You're sure about this? Michael Hand? When was he in the system? The name Michael Hand appears on computer screens across the cold case unit. A former Kingston resident, now living quietly in North Carolina. No major criminal history, no obvious connection to Tracy beyond geography and timing. Carrie studies his photograph, a middle-aged man with unremarkable features and eyes that reveal nothing. Could this ordinary-looking person be the monster who destroyed her family? The banality of evil has never felt more real. The drive to North Carolina takes 8 hours through changing landscapes, Massachusetts suburbs giving way to Connecticut valleys, New York highways stretching through industrial corridors, New Jersey truck stops, Pennsylvania farmland, and finally the rolling hills of rural North Carolina where Michael Hand has built his quiet life of anonymity. Hand's neighborhood reflects the American dream in its most modest form: tract houses with small lawns, American flags on porches, The kind of community where neighbors wave to each other but respect privacy. It's the perfect place for someone who wants to disappear from his past, to become just another middle-aged man living an unremarkable life. Detectives Martinez and Jack Collins, a veteran investigator with 25 years of experience, parked their unmarked vehicle across the street from Hans' modest ranch house. They study the property with the careful attention of hunters approaching dangerous prey, noting escape routes, potential witnesses, the layout of a life they're about to disrupt forever. Michael Hand, 54, emerges from his house to retrieve the morning paper, a ritual of normalcy that's about to end permanently. He's aged into anonymity, the kind of middle-aged invisibility that allows secrets to age undisturbed. Gray hair, reading glasses, the soft physique of someone whose demons have been sedated by decades of ordinary routine. The detectives approach with careful coordination, Martinez taking the lead, Collins positioned to block any escape route, both officers hyper-aware that they're confronting someone who may have committed murder and lived with that secret for over 3 decades. Mr. Hand? We're with the Massachusetts State Police. We need to ask you some questions about an incident that occurred in Kingston in 1986, specifically about Tracy Gilpin. The name hits Hand like a physical blow. His face drains of color, his hands begin to shake almost imperceptibly, and 32 years of careful forgetting crumble in an instant. His neighbors, watching from windows and porches, witness the moment when the past finally catches up to the present, when justice arrives in a subdivision where such things aren't supposed to happen. Hand's initial response is the practiced innocence of someone who has rehearsed this moment in nightmares for decades. But the detectives recognize the telltale signs, the micro-expressions of recognition, the way his breathing changes, the unconscious step backward that suggests a man whose world has just collapsed. That was a long time ago. I lived in Kingston then, but I don't know anything about. I remember hearing about that girl who went missing, but I don't know why you'd want to talk to me. The denial is automatic, practiced, but underneath the careful words runs a current of panic that the detectives can feel as clearly as heat from a fire. This is the moment they've traveled 8 hours to reach, the confrontation between past and present, between secret and revelation. Mr. Hand, we have some new evidence in Tracy's case. We'd appreciate it if you'd come with us to answer some questions. You're not under arrest, but we think you might be able to help us understand what happened to her. The invitation is polite but implacable, carrying the weight of 32 years of investigation and the authority of a system that never stops looking for answers. Hand glances at his house, his neighbors, his carefully constructed life of anonymity, and knows that everything is about to change forever. The North Carolina State Police facility feels institutional and impersonal, fluorescent lights, beige walls, the smell of strong coffee and industrial disinfectant. The interrogation room where Hand sits across from detectives Martinez and Collins has witnessed hundreds of confessions, denials, and moments of truth. But few cases carry the weight of 3 decades of waiting. Hand's transformation from suburban anonymity to murder suspect is stark and immediate. Gone is the casual confidence of a man checking his morning mail. In its place sits someone who looks like he's been expecting this moment for 32 years. Someone whose conscience has been eating away at him one sleepless night at a time. The interrogation begins with the standard ritual Miranda rights, read from a card worn smooth by countless repetitions. Hand's acknowledgement that he understands his rights, the careful dance of constitutional procedure that protects both the guilty and the innocent with equal indifference. Michael, we've come a long way to talk to you, all the way from Massachusetts. You know why we're here. You've probably been expecting us for a long time. The words hang in the air like smoke from a slow-burning fire. Hand's initial denials feel rehearsed, the practiced responses of someone who has played this scene in his mind countless times over the decades. But underneath the careful words runs a current of exhaustion, the bone-deep weariness of someone who has carried a terrible secret for too long. I told you, I don't know anything about what happened to that girl. I lived in Kingston, sure, but so did thousands of other people. I was just a kid myself back then, barely 18. But the detectives have done their homework. They know Hand's history, his movements in 1986, the fragile alibis that couldn't withstand modern scrutiny. Hour by hour, they dismantle his carefully constructed wall of denial using DNA evidence, timeline analysis, and the patient application of 30 years of accumulated investigative experience. Michael, we have your DNA profile. We have evidence from the crime scene. We know you were there. The question isn't whether you were involved, it's what really happened that day. Help us understand. The moment of truth arrives gradually, like dawn breaking over a battlefield. Hand's story shifts and evolves, first complete denial, then vague admissions of being in the area, finally something approaching the truth he's carried like a poison in his system for over 3 decades. I was there, in the woods. We were talking, and she got scared. She was going to run, going to tell people. I panicked. I picked up a rock and, God help me, I hit her. I hit her in the head. But I didn't mean to kill her. I swear I didn't mean for her to die. The confession spills out like blood from a reopened wound. 32 years of suppressed guilt, fear, and self-justification pouring into the sterile air of the interrogation room. Every word is recorded, documented, preserved for the legal proceedings that will follow. But for Hand, the confession seems to bring not relief, but a deeper kind of exhaustion, the bone-deep weariness of someone who has finally stopped running from the truth. Detectives Martinez and Collins exchange glances that carry the weight of professional satisfaction tempered by personal sorrow. They have what they came for, a confession that gives voice to Tracy Gilpin's final moments, answers that her family has waited 32 years to hear. But confessions, they know from hard experience, are only the beginning of the long journey toward justice. The courtroom buzzes with anticipation and media attention. Tracy's case has captured public imagination, a cold case solved after 3 decades, a sister's relentless pursuit of justice, a confession that seemed to close the circle of grief. But defense attorney Patricia Wong has other plans. Sharp and methodical, she challenges the admissibility of Hand's confession with surgical precision. Constitutional rights, procedural violations, the gray areas where justice and due process intersect. Your Honor, my client was questioned for 7 hours without proper Miranda warnings. The confession was coerced, obtained in violation of his constitutional rights. Judge Patricia Reynolds, experienced and careful, weighs the competing demands of justice and law. The courtroom holds its breath as she considers a decision that could unravel 30 years of waiting for answers. Judge Reynolds' decision falls like a hammer on glass. Hand's confession, the centerpiece of the prosecution's case, the words that seem to finally give Tracy a voice, is ruled inadmissible. Technical violations of procedure trump the pursuit of truth. While this court recognizes the gravity of this case and the family's long wait for justice, the Constitution protects all citizens, even those accused of terrible crimes. The confession is suppressed. The courtroom erupts in whispers and gasps. Carrie maintains her professional composure, but inside, she feels the familiar ache of justice deferred. The system she's devoted her life to protecting has protected the very person she believes destroyed her family. The district attorney's office on this evening feels like a morgue for dead cases, fluorescent lights humming over desks covered with legal briefs that might as well be obituaries for hopes and dreams. Prosecutor James Whitman, 51, stares at case files that now feel like monuments to the complex relationship between justice and law, between what is right and what is legally permissible. Whitman has prosecuted hundreds of cases over his 20-year career, but few have carried the emotional weight of Tracy Gilpin's murder. The suppression of Hand's confession feels like a betrayal of every principle that drove him to become a prosecutor. The belief that truth should matter, that victims deserve justice, that the legal system exists to protect the innocent and punish the guilty. 32 years this family has waited for answers. We finally get a confession detailed, corroborated by physical evidence, convincing enough to satisfy any reasonable doubt. And it gets thrown out because of a technicality. Martinez nods grimly, understanding the prosecutor's frustration because she shares it. The confession was their smoking gun, the key piece of evidence that transformed Michael Hand from suspect to perpetrator in the public consciousness. Without it, their case crumbles like ancient paper, leaving them with circumstantial evidence and a defendant who now knows exactly how much they can prove. The evidence they still possess tells a story, but it's a story with gaps that a skilled defense attorney can exploit. DNA evidence places Hand in the area where Tracy died, but it doesn't prove he killed her. Circumstantial evidence suggests opportunity and motive, but it falls short of the beyond a reasonable doubt standard that protects both the innocent and the guilty. What are our options? Can we appeal the suppression ruling? Find other evidence? There has to be something we can do that doesn't depend on the confession. Whitman spreads crime scene photos across his desk, images that have haunted investigators for 3 decades, evidence of violence that cries out for justice but may never receive it. The photos tell their silent story of a young life brutally ended, but courts don't convict based on emotion, no matter how justified that emotion might be. We can appeal, but the judge followed established precedent. The confession was obtained in violation of Hand's constitutional rights, and no appellate court is going to overturn that ruling. As for other evidence, we've been through everything, multiple times. The case was thoroughly investigated in 1986, and again when we reopened it. The silence that follows carries the weight of institutional failure, a system designed to protect constitutional rights even when those rights protect someone who may have committed murder. The law that exists to prevent wrongful convictions has inadvertently prevented what many believe would be a rightful one. Outside the office windows, Kingston goes about its evening routine, families gathering for dinner, children playing in yards, the ordinary rhythms of a community that has never fully healed from Tracy Gilpin's murder. The legal setback feels like a betrayal of their faith in justice, their belief that persistence and dedication would eventually prevail. Carrie works late into the night, surrounded by evidence, photos, and legal documents. The suppression of Han's confession feels like losing Tracy all over again. But she spent 32 years learning that grief and determination can coexist, that setbacks don't equal surrender. Her phone buzzes with messages from true crime advocates, journalists, and ordinary citizens outraged by the legal ruling. Tracy's case has become a symbol of persistence, of injustice, of the long arc of truth bending toward revelation. This isn't over. It's never over until we get you justice. The investigation continues, now focused on building a case without the confession. New witnesses, overlooked evidence, forensic advances, every avenue explored with the methodical patience of someone who has already waited 3 decades. Carrie stands before a crowd of reporters and cameras, representing not just law enforcement but every family member who has ever lost someone to violence. Her uniform carries the weight of authority, but her voice carries the weight of grief. Tracy was 15 years old when someone took her life. For 32 years, our family has lived with questions. Today, we have some answers, but our fight for justice continues. We will not rest until whoever killed my sister is held accountable. The press conference becomes a moment of catharsis, not just for Carrie, but for a community that has carried this wound for decades. Her words transform personal grief into public purpose, private pain into collective determination. The legal system grinds forward with glacial patience, appeals and counter-appeals, motions and briefs, the careful choreography of constitutional law playing out while Han remains charged but untried. Justice hangs in legal purgatory. Legal scholars debate the case in law reviews and academic conferences. Han versus Massachusetts becomes a symbol of the tension between protecting constitutional rights and delivering justice to victims' families. This case presents fundamental questions about the balance between law enforcement needs and constitutional protections. The court will take the matter under advisement. More waiting, more uncertainty. The wheels of justice turn so slowly that sometimes they seem motionless. But Carrie has learned patience from 3 decades of practice. Some victories take lifetimes to achieve. Technology continues evolving, offering new ways to extract truth from old evidence. Dr. Michael Chen, Patricia's colleague, applies cutting-edge DNA analysis techniques to samples that have waited decades for the right technology to unlock their secrets. The new methods are still inconclusive, but they don't exclude Hand. The genetic markers are consistent with his profile. Science inches forward while law stands still. Each technological advance brings new possibilities, new ways to speak for victims who can no longer speak for themselves. The evidence may be old, but the pursuit of truth remains constant. Carrie's living room has become a shrine to persistence, walls lined with commendations and awards, bookshelves filled with criminal justice textbooks and case law references, a desk that holds 3 decades of accumulated knowledge about murder investigation, victim advocacy, and the slow machinery of justice. But it's the personal touches that reveal the true cost of her crusade. Tracy's high school graduation photo sits prominently on the mantelpiece, forever 15, forever frozen in time, while her younger sister aged into middle age and carved out a career built on the foundation of loss. The photo captures Tracy's smile, that easy confidence of someone who believed the world was essentially good. The weight of carrying this burden for so long shows in the careful way Carrie moves through her home, the unconscious habits of someone who has learned to live with chronic pain. Every choice she's made, college major, career path, even the decision to remain unmarried, has been influenced by the promise she made at a graveside when she was 12 years old. Her refrigerator holds newspaper clippings about cold case breakthroughs, victim advocacy initiatives, changes in forensic technology. These articles represent more than professional interest. They're maps to a future where justice might finally catch up to the past, where promises made by grieving children might finally be kept by accomplished adults. I became a cop because of you. I became a colonel because of you. Every reform I've championed, every victim I've advocated for, every cold case I've pushed to reopen, everything traces back to losing you. The admission carries the weight of 3 decades of single-minded dedication. Carrie's entire adult life has been shaped by the need to honor Tracy's memory, to transform personal tragedy into public service, to ensure that other families don't endure the decades of waiting that hers has experienced. Her phone buzzes with another interview request, this time from a podcast that specializes in cold cases. Another opportunity to keep Tracy's name in the public consciousness and her case in the active files of law enforcement. Carrie answers these calls because speaking for the dead has become not just her profession but her calling. Yes, I'll do the interview. Tracy's story needs to be told. As long as there are people who remember her, there's hope for justice. As long as there are investigators willing to ask questions, there's a chance for answers. The interview request is just one of dozens she receives each month. Journalists, documentary filmmakers, true crime enthusiasts, and fellow law enforcement professionals who understand that some cases transcend normal investigative parameters. Tracy's murder has become a symbol of persistence, a test case for the proposition that justice delayed doesn't have to mean justice denied. After ending the call, Carrie returns to the reports spread across her coffee table. Updates on the hand case, appeals court filings, expert testimony about DNA evidence admissibility. Even with the confession suppressed, the investigation continues because giving up isn't an option when the victim is your sister and the promise is 30 years old. Hundreds of candles flicker against the darkness as Kingston gathers to remember Tracy Gilpin. 3 decades have passed, but the community's commitment to her memory burns as bright as ever. Old friends, new residents, strangers touched by her story, all united in shared purpose. Barbara Gilpin, now in her 70s, speaks with the quiet dignity of someone who has learned to live with unthinkable loss. Her words carry the authority of a mother's love that death cannot diminish. Tracy would be 47 years old today. She would have had children, maybe grandchildren. She would have lived a full life. We gather tonight not just to mourn what was lost, but to celebrate what she gave us, the determination never to forget. The candles reflect in tear-filled eyes, each flame a promise that Tracy's story will continue to be told. Her memory will continue to demand justice. Her death will continue to have meaning. District Attorney Maria Santos reviews the case status with the methodical attention of someone who understands that justice sometimes moves in geological time. Hand remains charged with murder. The case remains active. The search for admissible evidence continues. Michael Hand is charged with the murder of Tracy Gilpin. That charge stands. Our obligation to pursue justice doesn't end because of legal setbacks. We adapt, we persist, we find another way. The commitment is institutional now, bigger than any individual prosecutor or detective. Tracy's case has become part of the system's DNA, a reminder that some promises can never be broken, some pursuits can never be abandoned. Carrie addresses a room full of advocates, journalists, and families touched by violent crime. Tracy's case has become a teaching moment about persistence, about the evolution of forensic science, about the complex relationship between justice and law. Cold cases aren't just files gathering dust. They're promises waiting to be kept. Every advance in technology, every change in law, every new detective who picks up an old file, these are opportunities for justice delayed to become justice delivered. The audience responds with understanding born of shared experience. These are people who know that some wounds never heal, but that healing isn't always the point. Sometimes the point is simply refusing to let evil have the final word. The forest where Tracy died has changed little in 37 years, yet everything about it feels different now. The same towering pines reach toward a sky that has witnessed countless seasons, their bark scarred by wind and weather but enduring through decades of human sorrow and determination. The same paths wind through undergrowth that has grown and died and been reborn countless times since Tracy last walked among these trees. But the silence feels different now, less haunted, more watchful. Where once the forest seemed to guard its secrets with malevolent intent, now it feels like a repository of memory, a natural cathedral where the past and present coexist in delicate balance. The trees have become witnesses to more than tragedy. They become symbols of persistence, of the human refusal to let evil have the final word. Carrie walks these trails with Detective Martinez, both women shaped by their pursuit of a truth that has defined careers and consumed decades of their lives. Their footsteps crunch on fallen leaves that carpet the forest floor in layers of brown and gold, each step marking the journey from that terrible September day in 1986 to this moment of qualified resolution. They stop at the place where Tracy was found, a small clearing that has been marked by unknown hands with a simple memorial stone. Someone, perhaps a family member, perhaps a stranger touched by Tracy's story, has placed fresh flowers at the base of the stone. The gesture speaks to the power of a story well told, a life remembered beyond the boundaries of family and community. The memorial stone bears a simple inscription, Tracy Gilpin, 1971-1986, never forgotten. The words seem inadequate for a life that touched so many others, for a death that transformed a sister into a crusader, a community into a symbol of endurance, a cold case into a testament to the power of persistence. The case files remain open under active investigation status. Michael Hand is still charged with murder. The legal system is slow, but it doesn't forget. Someday, somehow, we'll find a way to make this right. That's all we can ask for, that someone keeps asking questions, keeps searching for answers, keeps fighting for justice. Tracy deserves that much. Every victim deserves that much. The promise we make to the dead isn't about closure, it's about continuation. They stand in contemplative silence, two women united by their refusal to let time bury truth, their commitment to speaking for those who can no longer speak for themselves. Around them, the forest continues its ancient rhythm of growth and decay, death and renewal, secrets buried and secrets revealed in the fullness of time. A breeze stirs the canopy above, sending leaves spiraling down like nature's own confetti, each one carrying the memory of seasons past and the promise of seasons to come. The sound they make as they fall is soft as whispers, gentle as prayers, persistent as the human heart's demand for justice. As they walk back toward the parking area, the morning sun breaks through the canopy in shafts of golden light that transform the forest from a place of shadows into something approaching sanctuary. The dappled light dances on their faces, warm despite the autumn chill, carrying the promise that some stories never end, they just continue in new voices, new generations, new commitments to honor the dead by refusing to forget them. Michael Hand remains charged with murder, his case caught in the complex machinery of constitutional law and appellate procedure. The investigation continues with the methodical patience of a system that has learned to measure progress in decades rather than days. Tracy Gilpin's story unfolds still, one careful step at a time, one piece of evidence at a time, one day at a time. In the broader context of American criminal justice, Tracy's case has become something more than a single tragedy. It's a symbol of evolution, of technological advancement, of the gradual expansion of justice across time. The DNA techniques that identified Hand as a suspect didn't exist in 1986. The databases that made the connection possible were unimaginable then. What seems impossible today may be routine tomorrow. Justice may be slow, but it is not blind, and it is not forgetful. It carries the accumulated weight of every victim, every investigation, every promise made by family members who refuse to accept that some questions have no answers. In this forest where Tracy died, where secrets were buried and then unearthed, the cycle continues. This is not a story about closure, because closure implies an ending, and some stories are too important to end. It's a story about continuation, the continuation of memory, the continuation of hope, the continuation of the human refusal to let evil triumph simply by surviving longer than those who oppose it. The forest keeps its remaining secrets, but some secrets are too heavy to stay buried forever. Some promises, once made, echo through time until they find their fulfillment. Tracy Gilpin's story is not over. It may never be over. And perhaps that is exactly as it should be, a reminder that justice deferred is not necessarily justice denied, that some debts can only be paid across decades, that love and determination can outlast even death itself.